Hello students, welcome to Byju's IAS. Welcome to a session on economy this week, wherein we'll be taking up some of the very important articles that have appeared in various business related newspapers, and we'll be analyzing these particular articles. For this particular video, I have chosen the time period from 7th to 13th of December 2020, and the articles that I've chosen are from Business Line, Hindu, Business Standard, Indian Express, Live Mint, and Financial Express. Let's begin the discussion. The first article is with respect to access to LPG and electricity. The article basically discusses two very important services which are provided by Government of India. One, electricity connection to the households, and second one, supply of LPG to the households. Basically, the article says that Government of India, through various reforms, measures as well as schemes in the last couple of years, has ensured that in case of India, 100% of the households are getting access to electricity as well as a LPG connection. Now, with respect to LPG connection, the article says that 98% of the households in India have got the LPG connection. Second very important point, Government of India implemented Pradhana Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. And with this particular Yojana, Government of India has pushed providing the subsidized LPG connections to beneficiary households. Next point, post 2014, more than 14 crore LPG consumers have been added. Fifth very important point, under this particular Yojana, PM Ujjwala Yojana, the connections which are provided are without any of the security that the households are supposed to provide. That is basically whenever you want to get an LPG connection, you are supposed to provide certain security. Now that particular amount need not be paid under the concept of PM Ujjwala Yojana. Now, as a result of these particular measures, the total number of LPG connections in India are around 28 crore now. So these are certain very important points which are given in the article with respect to LPG. Now with respect to electricity, there are two very important schemes which are mentioned in the article. The first one is Deen Dayal Upadhyay Grama Jyoti Yojana, and the second very important scheme which has been mentioned is Pradhana Mantri Saubhagya. Now basically under the first one, that is Deen Dayal Upadhyay Grama Jyoti Yojana, the Government of India wanted to electrify the villages. Even before this particular scheme was launched, in India, 6.5 lakh villages had already been electrified, and the earlier government had launched a scheme by the name of Rajiv Gandhi Grama Jyoti Yojana, under which also basically the Government of India wanted to provide electricity to the villages. And various experts basically have stated that Deen Dayal Upadhyay Grama Jyoti Yojana is nothing but a much more reformed version of the earlier scheme which was launched by the earlier UPA government. Now apart from this, under this particular scheme, Government of India has electrified more than 19,000 villages, and almost all the villages have been electrified with the launch of various programs or the schemes of Government of India. However, Government of India has noted that some of the villages even today are yet to get electricity connection because of the accessibility issues. Now in terms of the PM Saubhagya Yojana, the Government of India basically wanted to electrify the households. And with the launch of these particular schemes, more than 2 crore households have been electrified. As a result of all of these particular schemes, more than 24 crore houses in India have got electricity connection. Now, in addition to this, another very important point with respect to electricity that has been provided in this particular article is that with the launch of these particular schemes, some of the households which were getting access to electricity illegally are covered under this particular scheme now. The connections have been made legal. Some of the households which were unmetered have also been metered because of these particular reforms introduced by Government of India. So these are certain very important points which have been mentioned in this particular article. Now based on this particular discussion, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements regarding Pradhana Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. List of the beneficiaries includes forest dwellers, Antyodaya Anna Yojana beneficiaries, people belonging to most backward classes among others. Yes, this particular statement is true. Second one, The connections which are provided under this are deposit free. That is basically security did not be provided. Yes, even this particular statement is true. So since both the statements are true, right option will be option C, both are true. The next article is with respect to RTGS. First and foremost, RTGS stands for Real-Time Gross Settlement System. Now please understand, there are three different settlement systems in India. That is basically money transfer systems. One is IMPS, second one is NEFT, and the third one is RTGS. Now with respect to the first one, this is operated by NPCI. Second and third are operated by RBI. Now in case of NEFT, any amount can be transferred, but there is a lag. That is essentially the transactions which are made under NEFT, that is basically transfer from one account to another account. The transfer is going to happen, but in batches. Once every half an hour, these particular number of transactions which are pending will be cleared, will be settled. That is basically there is a lag wherever the money is transferred under NEFT. Now with respect to RTGS, money of at least or a transfer of at least value 2 lakh rupees shall be done. In simple terms, any amount that has to be transferred through RTGS has to be a minimum value of at least over 2 lakh rupees. Second very important point with respect to RTGS is there is no time lag, or in simple terms, the transactions are settled in real time. In case of NEFT, the transactions are settled in batches, whereas in case of RTGS, these are settled individually. Generally, it has been seen, not always, but generally, it is the businesses which are favoring the transfers of amounts through RTGS because it is done in the real time. Now, earlier, RBI had basically mandated that NEFT facility will be available 24/7. Now, RBI has basically announced that from December, even the RTGS will be available 24/7. And this particular announcement has already come into effect from 14th December 2020. Now, apart from this, what is the importance of this particular announcement of RBI? Since businesses tend to use this particular methodology of RTGS to transfer funds, it is estimated or it is expected that with 24/7 availability made as a feature of RTGS, the businesses will be very well placed to make many more transactions and time these particular transactions as per their convenience. And second, it is also said that with RTGS being made 24/7, international transactions will be promoted with this particular decision of RBI. So these are certain very important points with respect to this particular article. Now based on this, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements regarding RTGS. Any amount can be transferred under this particular method. This particular statement is wrong because under NEFT, minimum value of transaction should be 1 rupee. That is, any amount can be transferred through NEFT. Whereas in case of RTGS, a minimum value of 2 lakh rupees shall be transferred using this method. So first statement is wrong. RTGS was launched in 2004. Yes, this particular statement is true. It's just a factual information. Please remember this. So based on this, the right option will be option B. Only 2 is true. I've given another question here. Consider the following statements. RTGS, NEFT and IMPS are all managed by RBI. This statement is wrong. RTGS, NEFT are managed by RBI, whereas IMPS is managed by NPCI, National Payments Corporation of India. Second statement, transactions under both RTGS and NEFT are settled in slots or batches. Even this particular statement is wrong because as already discussed, in case of NEFT, these are settled in a half an hour slots or batches, whereas in case of RTGS, these are settled individually in real time. So both the statements are false. Right option is option D. Both are false. Next article is with respect to Competition Commission of India. Now first and foremost, Competition Commission of India was set up with the passage of Competition Commission Act of 2002. In simple terms, this is a statutory body. What is the role of a Competition Commission of India? Basically, Competition Commission of India will try to protect the interest of the customers in the market. It will try to basically prevent anti-competitive behavior of the companies in the market. It will regulate different types of mergers and amalgamations, takeovers, and different types of combinations. So these are the three very important objectives of Competition Commission of India. Now please understand this. Earlier, Competition Commission of India had imposed a huge amount of fines on cement manufacturing companies in India. The argument simply here was some of the builders, to be more precise, the Builders Association of India filed a complaint with CCI. Their allegation was that the cement manufacturing companies have colluded and are basically utilizing lesser capacity, as a result of which the prices in the market were increasing. Now what is the logic here? Basically, the cement manufacturing companies have created certain capacity. Now this particular capacity, let's say, is used to manufacture, I'll take a very simple number so that it is clear for you, 100 bags a day. Now if these particular cement manufacturers come together and basically decide to manufacture only 50 bags a day, it will basically create a mismatch between supply and demand in the market. And when there is a mismatch between supply and demand in the market, essentially supply is lesser, demand is higher. This will lead to increased prices of these particular commodities in the market. So the Builders Association of India, BAI, filed a complaint at CCI saying the same thing, that the cement manufacturers are underutilizing their capacity. And since they are underutilizing their capacity, basically this is leading to higher market price of the cement in the market. Now this particular point becomes very pertinent today for a simple reason. Even before the pandemic, real estate sector was under pressure. And with the pandemic, supply of these particular real estate units in the market has taken a hit. The demand also has taken a hit. And in recent times, many of the state governments are trying to increase the demand by implementing certain measures. For example, reduction in the stamp duties, which was done by Maharashtra very recently. Now in this particular situation, if the units or the houses which are built and sold in the market, the prices of these particular units increases because the cement prices are higher, then this will basically deal a body blow to the real estate sector. As a result of which, there is a fear that the demand for these particular units will be much lesser or will go down in the market. And this will affect the economic recovery overall. Now against this particular practice of cement manufacturing companies, Builders Association of India filed a complaint at Competition Commission of India. Competition Commission of India imposed heavy fines, over 6,300 crore rupee worth of fine on these particular cement manufacturing companies. Some of the companies which are involved in this particular case and which were fined are Ultratech Cement Company, ACC, Ambuja Cements, Ramco Cements, JK Cements, etc. Now the cement manufacturers appealed against the order of Competition Commission of India at Competition Appellate Tribunal, CAT, and CAT basically put a stay on the order of Competition Commission of India and directed the cement manufacturing companies to deposit 10% of the penalty amount. Later, Competition Appellate Tribunal, which has been renamed as a National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, basically threw out or dismissed the plea of cement manufacturers and said these particular cement manufacturers or directed the cement manufacturers to pay the remaining penalty amount. Against this particular order, the cement manufacturers approached Supreme Court of India in 2018, and this particular plea is still pending in the Supreme Court of India. Now this is the basic evolution of this particular case which has happened earlier. Now why this is there in the newspaper? Very recently, again the Competition Commission of India has started a fresh probe into these particular cement manufacturers and has cited that these particular companies are involved in anti-competitive behavior. So this is the gist of the article given here. The next article, One Nation, One Ration Card. Now first and foremost, Government of India has launched NFSA, National Food Security Act. Under this, the beneficiaries are entitled to get access to 5 kgs of food grains monthly. I am speaking from the perspective of an individual beneficiary. Some of the books might simply tell you it is 25 kg per household. It is either 5 kg per person per month, or it is 25 kg for a household with a family size of 5 people. And again, this entitlement is monthly. Under this particular NFSA, ration cards have been issued, and these particular beneficiaries are supposed to get access to subsidized food grains. The issue with respect to this kind of a ration which is provided is, what if the beneficiary moves from one state to another state? Now he is a beneficiary or identified as a beneficiary in the first state. He has migrated to the second state. Now for him to get access to the same benefit will become very difficult. To address this particular issue, Government of India has proposed this particular concept of card portability or ration card portability. And this has been implemented essentially in the name of One Nation, One Ration Card. Now understand one more point here. Government of India in recent times has basically allowed the states to borrow additional 2% of gross state domestic product. I'll repeat the statement here. As per FRBM Act, Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act, the states are bound to borrow up to 3%, that is basically maintain a fiscal deficit of 3% of the gross state domestic product. But Government of India very recently has allowed the states to borrow an additional up to 2% of gross state domestic product. But there is a condition here. What is the condition? Central government says, we will link this particular borrowing or additional borrowing with some of the reforms that you are supposed to implement. I'll repeat the statement here. This additional borrowing of 2% of GSDP is linked to some of the reforms that the states are supposed to implement, as a result of which the service delivery to the citizens is expected to improve. Now what kind of reforms are linked here? Some of the very important reforms which the states are supposed to implement to get a leeway of additional borrowing of 2% are implementation of One Nation, One Ration Card scheme. Second, implement reforms to promote ease of doing business. Third, urban local body reforms, power sector reforms, utility reforms, etc. And whenever a particular state would implement reforms and meet the standards which are set up by the government, additional borrowing to certain extent would be allowed. For example, if a particular state implemented One Nation, One Ration Card by 31st December 2020, then it would be allowed to borrow additional 25 basis points in addition to 3% limit as per FRBM Act. Now this particular additional 25 basis points for overall all the states would lead to a huge amount of borrowings in the market. And this would provide a huge relief to the states as their finances are under huge amount of stress. So these are certain very important points with respect to the background of One Nation, One Ration Card and the linkage to the announcement of the central government. Now what is there in the article? The article basically mentions that 9 states have implemented One Nation, One Ration Card scheme, and this has been basically certified by the Department of Food and Public Distribution, which is the nodal department to certify whether the states have implemented the scheme correctly or not. These particular 9 states are Andhra Pradesh, Goa, Gujarat, Haryana, Karnataka, Kerala, Telangana, Tripura and Uttar Pradesh. And as a result of this, these particular states are allowed to borrow 25 basis points or 0.25% in addition to the 3% fiscal deficit, that is basically the market borrowings. As a result of this particular leeway, the states are expected to raise a borrowing of over 23,000 crore rupees. Now this is the information which has been provided in this particular article. Now based on this, I've given a question here. Center has allowed additional borrowing of 2% of a GSDP provided states implement reforms in some of the sectors. Which of the following are included in this particular list? One nation, one ration card, yes, it is part of it. Power sector reforms, yes. Ease of doing business reforms, yes. Urban local body reforms, yes. All the four are part of the set of the reforms which are linked to additional borrowing limit to the states. Hence the right answer will be option D, 1, 2, 3 and 4. The next article discusses the price volatility of various commodities in the market, and as a result of which the impact on the farmers in India. Some of the very important points discussed in the article are: first one, almost all the commodities, that is agriculture commodities which are sold in the domestic market, experience volatility in their prices. Some experience lesser volatility in their movement of the prices, and some commodities which are perishable commodities such as tomato experience a huge amount of volatility in the prices. Just to make the point much more clear, you can have a look at this particular graph. In this particular graph, in the last couple of years, what has happened to the price of tomato has been displayed, and you will realize that the prices of tomato, which is a perishable commodity, which is affected by supply and demand dynamics in the market, has fluctuated to a very great extent. Now the second very important point, the farmers predominantly sell their commodities in the private mandis or private markets, and these particular farmers are affected by the volatility in the prices of these agriculture commodities. In addition to this, farmers do not have much bargaining power in these particular private markets for a simple reason. One, they are unable to time the sales, that is basically they are selling the commodities when the prices are lower, and they are unable to time the sales of their commodities when the prices are very, very higher. So the timing of the sales is not correct for the farmers. They are unable to time it. Second, they do not have a storage space, as a result of which the farmers are facing this particular volatility issue even in the private markets. Now, Government of India very recently in its farm laws has announced that it will allow the farmers to sell even outside the APMC mandis, outside the states also. Contract farming is also allowed, etc. This particular article discusses certain issues related to these particular laws. Next very important point, it basically says Bihar was the first state in India which abolished APMC Act in 2006. In addition to Bihar, states such as Kerala does not have a APMC Act. But in case of Bihar, the sale of the commodities under MSP are negligible. It has been seen that various private traders are procuring the commodities such as wheat and paddy at a price much lesser than MSP, then taking this particular commodity to areas such as Punjab and Haryana, and they are selling this same commodity at MSP in these particular states. Since there is a volatility in the prices of these particular commodities in the market, the farmers are more dependent on cultivation of those particular crops which will attract MSP, in essence, which is procured by the government. And this basically promotes more and more cultivation of these crops, which will have certain negative impacts such as depletion of water table. This article mentions that a water stressed area such as Marathwada is cultivating a crop such as sugarcane, which is a water guzzling plant. In essence, it requires huge amount of water. So these are certain very important points which are mentioned in the article. Now with respect to the farm laws which has been discussed, or some aspects have been discussed in the article, it basically says, as Government of India, to address this particular volatility in the prices of the commodities or agriculture commodities in the market, is promoting the concept of a contract farming. But the article mentions that, now basically under contract farming, what will happen? The farmer and buyer, that is basically nothing but company, will enter into an agreement. That is basically before the crop is harvested, they both have entered into an agreement with respect to what crop would be cultivated, at how much price the buyer would be purchasing it from the farmer, what quantity will be purchased, etc. Now the concern which has been raised in this particular article is, what if the agreed price is, let's say, 20 rupees, and when the time of purchasing actually comes into picture, market price is actually 30 rupees. That is essentially, if the farmer sells his crop to the buyer here, that is basically a company, he would be getting how much? 20 rupees. But if he sells the same crop in the market, he would be getting how much? 30 rupees. In such a situation, he could simply renege the contract. And on the other hand, the farmers are concerned that if the same situation happens vice versa, that is, the agreed price is 20 rupees and the market price when the contract is supposed to be implemented of the same crop is 15 rupees. Now if the company purchases the crop from the farmer, he has to pay how much? 20 rupees. But if the same company purchases the same crop from the market, the company has to shell out only 15 rupees. So in this particular situation, the company may simply renege the contract and try to purchase from the market. So there is a concern with respect to implementation of contract farming law or contract farming provision, which is a part of the agriculture reforms which was announced by Government of India very recently. So these are certain very important points which are mentioned in the article. Finally, the article mentions what should be the way forward in case of India. In some of the countries, basically the subsidy is given in the form of direct cash support. It can be tried out in case of India. Now in case of some of the other countries, the subsidies are transferred based on the land holding size. So these are the two recommendations which have been provided at the end of the article here. So these are certain very important points discussed in the article. Based on this, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements. Bihar is the first state in India to abolish APMC Act. Yes, this statement is true. MSP, minimum support price, was introduced in 1966-67. Yes, even this particular statement is true. So the right option is option C. Both the statements are true. The next article is related to 4-point agenda for Indian banks. This article basically discusses the challenges which are faced by the banking sector during the times of pandemic and post that, and what reforms or measures or steps should be taken to address these particular issues. First and foremost, the article says that though COVID is not an issue associated with the banking sector, there is no doubt in the fact that COVID had an impact on the performance of the banking sector. And this particular COVID will continue to have an impact on the banking sector. How so? With the onset of COVID or pandemic in India, large number of borrowers have defaulted on their repayment, as a result of which NPAs have ballooned in the banking sector. And this particular issue of rising NPAs will continue even for the next couple of months or even for the next 1 year because of the impact of the COVID. Not only this, because of this, the finances of a banking sector have come under a lot of pressure. And this article mentions that it will take more than 4 years for the banking sector to reach the level of the earnings that it had pre-COVID. That is basically to match the earnings of 2019. The banks will be taking more than 4 years and they will be achieving the same earnings by 2024. So this is the first very important point, that is basically the impact of COVID on the banking sector. Second very important point, the article mentions that thankfully the banking sector was well capitalized when the pandemic took an impact or had an impact on the overall economy. Third, the article discusses that the banking sector will continue to face challenges, and in order to address these particular challenges, certain measures or steps need to be implemented in the banking sector. First and foremost, the article says that the customers in the banking sector have got adjusted to new digital banking methods. And to address this, or in order to continue this particular process, the banking sector or the banks in India will have to develop digital assets. Not only this, it has to provide training or reskill its employees in order to ensure that the service delivery is satisfactory even under this particular digital banking era. Second, some of the banks have had exposure in some of the sectors which have been affected badly by the pandemic or COVID. There is a need to look at the lending mechanisms now. There is a need to rework the lending mechanisms because one lesson of this particular pandemic has been that there are certain sectors which are resilient to the pandemic, and there are certain sectors which will be affected greatly by such a pandemic even in the future. Third, better risk management models must be developed. And fourth, better automated infrastructure in the banking sector must also be developed. So these are the four very important points which have been mentioned in this particular article. Now based on this, I have given a question here. Discuss the role of banking sector in the aftermath of the pandemic, 250 words. Now please understand, banking sector even before the pandemic played a huge role in India's economic growth rate. And even during the pandemic and after the pandemic, it will be the banking sector which will continue to play a very critical role. That is a precise reason very recently there has been a lot of discussion with respect to the lending activity of the banking sector. Because one way to revive growth in case of India is to revive consumption in the market. And please understand, it is the consumption which accounts for 55% of GDP in case of India. That is basically the expenditure which will lead to consumption will add to GDP growth rate. And in recent times, various experts, even RBI governor has been critical of the banking sector and their lending activity in the recent times. So banking sector even before the pandemic was very, very important, very critical in terms of GDP growth rate in case of India, and has become much more important because of the pandemic in the present situation. So you will have to discuss the role of the banking sector in the aftermath of the pandemic. The next article is with respect to defense sector and recent announcement of Government of India to allow FDI in the defense sector. Now, two very important points here. Finance Ministry has basically okayed 74% FDI in the defense sector. And this is expected to attract huge companies or MNCs which will start entering into agreements, joint operations with some of the Indian companies. This is going to promote production under the defense sector. Second very important point, this particular 74% FDI is allowed under automatic route. Now basically automatic route means that the FDI the company wants to bring into India, the company need not have to take any kind of approvals from the government. Essentially, government will divide the sectors into those particular sectors where automatic route is allowed and those where approval route has to be taken. And this particular route, automatic route, is essentially used to attract more and more investment in the said sector. So these are the two very important points with respect to the announcement of Government of India in defense sector. So these are certain very important articles as well as the questions related to the articles for this particular time period. Thank you. Have a good day.